Hello again everyone from Tokyo, Japan, and welcome back to Japan Vintage Camera, where I'm coming to you today from Alama Park next to Tokyo National Art Center on what so far is the hottest day of the summer. But I have a nice shade tree which I'm sitting under right now, and I'm enjoying a cool breeze, so it's actually quite pleasant out here. It's much nicer here than it is in other parts of the city and in the concrete and asphalt jungle where people are really miserable right now. If they had any sense, they would come here to the park where I am and just relax and enjoy the shade. Anyway, let's go ahead and get started with the subject of today's video, and today I'm going to be doing what it says in the title. I'm going to be reviewing one of Yashica's rarest rangefinder cameras, and that is the Minister 700 from 1963. Before I continue, I have a quick public service announcement. On Wednesday, my family and I will be going to America for our summer holiday. We'll be in America for 12 days visiting friends and family, so during that time I'm not going to be accepting orders at my Etsy store. I'm going to have the vacation settings turned on. If you want to buy a camera, I will leave my Japan Vintage Camera store open. Just keep in mind I won't be able to ship anything until we return from America. With that out of the way, let's go ahead and get started. So the Yashica Minister 700 is kind of one of these oddball cameras which was just, I guess, at the wrong place at the wrong time. In the early 1960s, Yashica was producing a large variety of rangefinder cameras and was entering the market with its first SLR cameras. Not only did we have the Lynx series, the Minister series, and the Campus series, but we also had things like the Mimi and the YK and YL. There were a lot of different cameras on the market at the time, and in those days, camera stores didn't sell just what was available that year. Sometimes they had stock for 2 or 3, sometimes longer years. And when the Minister 700 came out, it came out at a time when there was just a lot of competition, even from Yashica's own cameras. And there were other options which were more attractive than the Minister 700. You can get the Minister D, which is the base model of the Minister series, for a much lower price. And if you wanted a higher end camera, rather than getting the Minister 700 with its f1.7 lens, you could get the Lynx 14 with its faster yet and fastest of all of the fixed lens rangefinder cameras with its f1.4 lens. So due to its placement in the market, it just didn't do very well. And I don't see a lot of these cameras here in Japan. They pop up fairly regularly, but for every Electro 35, or every 500 Electro 35 cameras, I will see one Minister 700. And finding these cameras in good condition is quite rare. This is only the second one out of the few that I've come across which has a working light meter and is otherwise in good working condition. It's very rare to find these that are still operating, and luckily I was able to get a good example to share with you for this video. So let's go ahead and take a look at the features, controls, and functions of the Minister 700, starting from the top here. And I like the nice, clean, intelligent layout on the top. Yashica was already thinking toward the future, and a lot of the features which came on the Minister and Lynx cameras were carried on over into the Electro 35 series, which came out about 3 years later. We have the film rewind knob here, which is almost identical to what comes on the Yashica Electro 35. We have the flash sync socket here, not flash sync, flash shoe on the top. The sync socket is located on the top. You can use a vintage or a modern flash on this camera quite easily. If you're using a bulb flash, you can just use the socket here and set the settings here on the side for the shutter speed. If you're using a modern strobe flash, you can just use an adapter PC sync socket cord and then just use the directions on your flash when setting the camera. Moving over here, we have the light meter. This is where it gets a little bit tricky and where you need to understand a few basics to operate this camera. This operates just like a handheld light meter, and the Yashica's first the first of any Japanese camera to come with a built-in light meter was a Yashica, the AS twin lens reflex camera, and it was Seaconic which produced the light meter for that camera, and I believe produced the light meters for the later ones as well. What you have to do first is you have to program the light meter to match the film which you have loaded in the camera, and you simply do that by turning this dial here and matching the number in this little window, this tiny little window, and selecting the number which matches the film you have in the camera. And then you use this EV system here for programming the aperture and shutter speed. It's quite simple to use once you get used to it, and if you've ever used a handheld light meter, it works exactly the same way. To the right of that we have the shutter release button, which accepts a standard cable release. And over here we have the film winding and shutter charging button. I love how smooth it is. It's quite smooth and easy to use, very well made. Much better than the less expensive like Petri or Beauty or I guess basic cameras of those days. Yashica were already making very high quality cameras at this time. And of course here we have the film counter window. On the top here I mentioned the shoe for the flash. If you remove the shoe cover here, there's a hole underneath which you can use to adjust the horizontal adjustment for the rangefinder. On the back of the camera here, this is the light meter actuator button. You have to push down on this, and when you push down on this, if the light meter works, and there's probably at least a 1 in 50 chance that it will, you'll be able to see the needle moving in the light meter. Next to that we have the viewfinder eyepiece, and this is actually quite a nice viewfinder in this camera. This already features the same design which was used later in the Yashica Electro 35. It's nice and large and it has really good contrast. Keep in mind, if you try to take the top cover off this camera to clean out the viewfinder, it's not that hard to do, but the split image mirror on this side, the beam splitting mirror is what I should call it. It's very fragile. It's not as durable as the Yashica Electro 35, so it's really easy to rub off the reflective coating. If you do rub it off or it's too messed up to save, you can transplant a mirror from an Electro 35 into this camera. It just takes basic tools. It's not that hard to do. All you need is a pair of side cutters, a file, and some glue, and it takes a little bit of time to do, but it's not at all difficult. Over here we have this screw here, which if you remove that, inside you'll find the adjustment screw for the vertical adjustment for the rangefinder. So the rangefinder in this camera is quite easy to adjust. And we have some nice sturdy steel lugs for mounting the neck strap. Better than some of the ones which come on other cameras. I've had some of these which tend to pull out quite easily. Yashica was making really durable cameras, and believe it or not, a lot of schools in Japan were actually buying cameras like these from Yashica to use in their photography classes. On the bottom of the camera we have the switch, the lever which you use to open the film door. It's kind of a two-part one. You have to push it down and move it toward the front, and that will open it up. Here we have the access cover for the battery chamber, which you can remove. It's designed to be removed with a 100 yen coin, which is about the same size as a quarter. This camera uses an MR9 mercury battery, 1.3 volts or 1.35 volts. Those, unfortunately, or for better or worse, probably for better, aren't produced anymore, but you can use a PX625 battery that is the same size, or you can get an MR9 adapter and use an LR44 or SR44 battery. Here we have a standard 1/4 inch tripod socket, and over here we have the release button, which you have to depress before you rewind the film. Now all the important stuff is located on the front of the camera. Here we have the cell for the light meter. So when you are taking a light meter reading, be careful how you hold the camera so you don't block the cell and mess up the reading, interfere with the light coming into it. We have the focusing ring here on the bottom, and we have a focusing scale arranged in feet and meters. Above that we have a depth of field scale, which will show you how much depth of field you have between any given aperture setting. In front of that we have the aperture ring itself. We have a range of f1.7 to f16, and in front of that we have the shutter speed scale, and this camera features a full range of shutter speeds from bulb and 1 second to 1/500th of a second. In front of that we have an EV ring, and the EV ring system, it has a series of numbers which match the numbers on the top of the light meter here. So when you take a light meter reading, so I'm going to go ahead and switch this over to here. Take a quick light meter reading, which is definitely wrong because I said I have to adjust the light meter in this. So light meter reading is say EV16, so I would choose, like, say, the aperture I want to get. So it's a bright day, so maybe f11, and I'll go ahead and switch this over to 16, and it's recommending 1/500th of a second at f16, which is actually, it would be correct for a day like today, sunny day shooting ISO 400 speed film. And then you would simply wind and take the photograph. So it's not that hard of a not a difficult system to use. You just set the aperture you want to use and then use the EV setting and when you get to the right number, it will have automatically selected the best, or computed I should say, the best shutter speed. And of course you would on a day like today where it's really bright outside, you need a fast shutter speed. If you're trying to capture or freeze action within the image, like you're taking pictures of a landscape, you don't want the trees moving back and forth, you don't want them to blur the photo, you want to use a faster aperture. On the other hand, sometimes you want a sharper image and you want to stop down the camera to a smaller aperture. That kind of slows down the shutter speed. Either way you want to do it, but what you do is simply start by choosing the aperture you want on the bottom ring and then using the EV ring to move the shutter speed to where you like it. Or you can do it vice versa. If you're more focused, if you're more like a shutter priority person over an aperture priority person. And on the bottom here we have a self timer. I recommend never to use the self timer. I've mentioned before that this is the weakest link in any camera which has a lens shutter. That is where the shutter is located in the lens assembly. These are very prone to failure in rangefinder cameras or twin lens reflex cameras. Avoid using it. If you really need a self timer, you can get a Walls or a similar one which just screws in the shutter release on the button on the top, and then you can set it there. Those are the most reliable, and I mentioned before this is the control for setting the flash sync settings on the side of the lens. And that's pretty much it. Things that you have to look out for in these cameras. The first thing you have to look out for is a working light meter, and this is only the second camera I've ever come across where the light meter actually works. As I said, it's not accurate, needs some adjustment, but fortunately there's an adjustment on the inside where you can increase or decrease the sensitivity of the light meter. Another thing you have to look for in these cameras is the aperture blades can get oil on them and stick. And when you try to move the aperture ring, it can break the pins off the aperture blades, which pretty much dooms the camera. These are really, I don't recommend trying to take these apart to remove and clean the aperture or shutter blades. The system in here is, there are a few layers of dials and spacers and things like that you have to fight your way through to be able to get it apart, and then of course you have to put all these things back together when you reassemble the camera. Basically what I do with one of these cameras, I'll do the basic way to get it to get the shutter and aperture cleaned up. I'll remove the front lens element and I will simply wipe the blades clean with a cotton swab soaked in solvent or lighter fluid, and that will get them clean enough. And that's of course not the best possible way to do it, but the cost to have it done professionally is usually 2 or 3 times what the camera is worth, and few people will bother to do that unless they have a strong sentimental attachment or something like that. But basically I would just do the basic minimal cleaning to try to get one of these ones going, unless you're lucky enough to find some sellers who have these refurbished or which are still in good operating condition. Now I'll be having this camera on my workbench when I come back from my vacation, and I'll have it listed for sale probably by the 3rd week of August if someone is looking for a really nice Minister 700. I have the camera, the lens cap, and the leather case, and I think I even have a box for one of these cameras, so I'll just go ahead and include everything with it. So if you're interested in this camera, please check back from the 3rd week of August, and I should have it ready by then. And I have a whole bunch of stock which I'm building up right now, which I plan to list when I return. Right now my stores are becoming a little bit depleted because, as I said, I'm leaving on holiday in a few days. And but when I come back, I'll be putting a whole lot of new things up for sale. So if you don't see something that you're looking for right now, after the 2nd week of August, I should have a whole lot of other things available. But anyway, that's it for today. I'm starting to get really sweaty out here. As I said, I'm in a nice, shady, breezy part, but I'm still really hot and sweaty, so I'm going to go ahead and stop now. I'll be making more videos when I return from my holiday, and I've got a couple of more cameras lined up which I plan to review. If you'd like to see those, please subscribe. If you like this video, you found it helpful, please click the like button. Thank you very much for watching, and I hope you tune in again soon.